In this tutorial video, I'm going to show you how to add a zipper access panel to most any shirt pattern. I'm using the Isabella top pattern that you can find at dittopatterns.com, but this access panel can be added to most any shirt that has just a shoulder seam and an armscye. You'll need knit fabric according to your pattern, as well as serger thread, regular thread, 2 zippers, and I highly suggest Wonder tape or a sticky tape. Begin by cutting out the back panel of your shirt. As you're going, be sure that you mark your notches. And I like to put a notch center back. You'll also cut out 2 of the sleeves. Now I'm going to show you how to adjust the front piece to make the zipper area. We're still going to cut this piece on the fold. The first step is to figure out where you would like the zipper to end up on the front of your shirt. We'll want this to go in a slight diagonal towards the armscye. When making pattern adjustments, I really like using painter's tape on my mat. That way it doesn't damage the mat and I can make any markings I need. For this shirt, I want my zipper panel to start about 3.5 inches below the shoulder seam and about 3.5 inches from the side seam underneath the arm. This may differ for you, so just take measurements or decide where on the body you would like a zipper. I start by laying down my tape in the general area. The great thing about painter's tape is you can always readjust on your mat. Once my tape is placed, I can fine-tune my markings and my measurements. I'm measuring down about 3.5 inches, excluding the seam allowance, and 3 to 3.5 inches, excluding the seam allowance from that side seam. This will give me good placement for that port access. Now that I have my markings, I can draw a straight line on that tape. I will be cutting this piece on the fold, so I'm taking a moment to fold it in half, matching up the grain line on each side. When folding, I suggest right sides together because we will be doing some markings on the fabric itself. I'm going to mark the general area of where that piece of tape is. I can at least see it on the neckline. Place your pattern weights and begin cutting. As you get to the armscye and the neckline, you can go just below the shoulder and begin cutting. Now that tape is exposed and we can see our cut line. I did the same for the neck. With a pencil and a ruler, you can now retrace that line onto your fabric. This will be the stitch line of our zipper. Shift your ruler up to mark your seam allowance. I'm using 5/8 inch seam allowance on this pattern. Draw a new line. This will be your cut line. Now we're all set for a zipper, and this first part of the bodice is ready to go. Next step is to finish cutting out that shoulder piece. You'll want to mark all your markings as well as the center front and the other side. To mark that stitch line on the other side, we know our seam allowance is 5/8, so I'm just going to measure down 5/8 of an inch and draw a new line. We're going to repeat these steps, but on the shoulder panel. So move enough fabric down to cover your shoulder as well as that line we had drawn previously on the painter's tape. Begin cutting on your shoulder seam allowance and add your weights. Cut out the arm's eye as well. Now your painter's tape line is exposed. We'll do the same thing on the neckline. Just like on the lower bodice piece, we're going to trace our stitch line. This is where the zipper will go. And we will add 5/8 seam allowance for the shoulder. Add that seam allowance on the other side. This is a great technique not just for a port access zipper, but anytime you want to add a zipper to a panel. As you can see, when these are put together and sewn with that zipper, they'll be the same exact size as the original pattern. Now we can remove the painter's tape from our mat. A hood is optional for this project. The Isabel top does not come with a hood, so I pulled a hood from a different pattern. Since recording this video, Ditto has released quite a few patterns that include hoodies and zip-up hoodies. One of those would work well for this project. This pattern has 5/8 seam allowance. I'd like to change the neck to have a neckband instead of a facing or a rollover. So I'm going to remove my seam allowance to make room for that neckband and end up with the original neckline of this pattern. To do that, I'm measuring 5/8 seam allowance and marking a line. This will be my cut line. I'll do this on all 3 of my pattern pieces that go around the neck. Now that the neckline is prepared, it's time to start assembling the shirt. I'm going to start by sewing my shoulder seams together. Place your center back piece right side up and add those shoulder pieces we cut out. Pin or clip across and then sew with a 5/8 seam allowance. I'm using my serger for this project, so I'll be cutting off some of the seam allowance as I sew. If using a sewing machine, sew with a slight zigzag or a stretch stitch on that 5/8 seam line. If you want to know more about sewing knits on a sewing machine, check out some of our other videos, including the Andrea top. I'm going to make guard pieces for the zippers so that the zipper itself is not resting on sensitive skin. To do that, I'm going to start by cutting out 2 rectangles. The width of my rectangles are 3.5 inches, and the length is going to be a few inches longer than your zipper needs to be. You can get this measurement by measuring from that arm's eye to the neckline that you previously cut. For me, a 9-inch rectangle is going to be plenty. With my 2 pieces cut, I can fold them in half, right sides together. I'm going to cut a slight curve into the one side, starting on the fold. You can lay one piece on top of each other to get a similar curve. Once cut, we'll use our sewing machine to stitch around this curve and create a finished edge. Turn it right side out and give it a light press. We can then finish our edges with a serger or a zigzag stitch on your sewing machine. Now my zipper guards are ready to go. Set them aside. Next, we will finish the neckband and add that optional hood. I cut a neckband for this project that is the length longer than my whole neckline by 2 inches, and you want the length to go around the greatest of stretch. If you're doing the hood, let's get that in place now. As you can see, I sewed the center back seam of the hood and I finished the front edges. When choosing a hood pattern, you want the hood to end up right before the zipper. You'll see in a moment. Start by matching up that center back seam and clipping or pinning into place. As you can see here, the edge of my hood is going to end right above that zipper that we're inserting. I'm going to take a minute to serge this on just to keep it in place before adding the neckband. If you're not adding a hood, you can skip to this step. Our neckband is going to end up looking just like this on the back. Place the neckband onto your bodice and begin pinning. Pull gently as you pin into place. Serge or sew the neckband on to the back bodice. If you added a hood, the hood will be sandwiched between the bodice and the neckband. Now you can see our neckband in the back is complete. You can give the neckband a little bit of a press and then cut off the excess edges and any surging strings. This is where our zipper will go. Next, we'll finish that neckband of that front piece with the remainder of our band that we cut. Just like before, begin on one edge and pin it in place. Pull gently as you line up the raw edges. Serge or sew. Press your neckband and clip the edges. They will be even with the raw edge of your bodice. Now it's time to start adding our zipper. The length of your zipper doesn't matter as long as it's longer than the shoulder seam you're sewing your zipper into. I'm going to start on the shoulder. I'm marking about 1.25 inches in. That will be the beginning of my zipper guard. I'm using Wonder Tape to hold everything in place. Sewing a zipper on knit can be tricky, and using tape or glue can really help hold things in place as you sew and pin. Pull off the backing and place the guard. Next, we'll add our zipper. I'll use another piece of Wonder Tape the length of that cut edge. It'll go up to that neckband. It's a good idea to mark where your neckband is on that guard. Open your zipper and place it right side down, matching up the stopper with that neckline mark that you had made. Move the zipper out of the way. As we move on to other steps, this is how the guard will get folded in. I want to show you for reference how this will look when finished. Another option, if you don't want to use Wonder Tape, is to use a little bit of fabric glue. This will also hold things in place as you get them lined up when sewing with knits. I'm repeating the same process on the other side, placing my guard with the curved side in 1 inch to 1¼ inch from my neckband. Use glue or that Wonder Tape to add your zipper. Just like before, place your zipper right side down, matching up that stopper with your neckband. Now we can sew our zippers in place. I installed a zipper foot onto my machine. I'll backstitch at that stopper and continue sewing on. The goal is to get close to the zipper, but this is not an invisible zipper, so you don't need to get right against the teeth. Give it a slight press to flatten everything. Then fold your guide right over so that the edges line up with that neckband. Use pins to hold it in place. Continue pitting the guard to the back of the zipper. Adjust as needed. Your guard will cover the rough edges of the zipper as well as make a clean finished seam allowance on the inside. Once pinned, you can top stitch through all the layers to hold the zipper and zipper guard in place. Now we can attach the zipper to the other part of the shirt. Apply tape to your zipper. Fold over the lower bodice piece and place right side on top of the zipper and press to hold in place. Backstitch and stitch your zipper onto that lower bodice piece. Fold over and tuck the top end of the zipper in. If it's helpful, give your zipper and your fabric a press before pinning. I'm going to go ahead and just pin mine in place. Top stitch and back stitch to hold your zipper in place, and to conceal the top of the zipper tape. As you can see, I set both zippers in on either side. Our zipper pulls are concealed and we have that guard underneath to protect the skin. I took a moment to stitch the bottom of my zipper about 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch in from that arm's eye, now that I'm going to be working in this section. This will just keep my zipper from unraveling as I work. Once stitched, you can take a moment to cut off that excess zipper and the excess guard. Now we can move on to following the pattern instructions and adding the sleeve. I start by matching up the shoulder seam and then the side seams. Use the notches to line up the rest of the sleeve. You can now serge or sew the sleeve into place. Be careful as you go over the zipper with your serger or sewing machine. I added some top stitching at the edge of my zipper just to secure that all into place. Now my access panel is complete. The final steps would be finishing the shirt or sweatshirt as your instructions say. For me, this is adding the side seam and finishing the hem. I'm going to add thumbhole cuffs to this sweatshirt. Check out our video on how to do that. I also added a sweatshirt pocket. I just wanted to show you some options you could do to make this sweatshirt nice and cozy. For more tips, tricks, and tutorials, check out the rest of our YouTube channel and join the Ditto thread on Facebook.